Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bales Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I am really excited about the show that we have today. These are the people you're going to meet are sort of unsung heroes. They don't look at themselves that way, but they are. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is a very important component in what's going on in Iraq. I'll introduce my guests first. Dave Holly is with the Corps, as is Melissa Head, and you'll find out what they're doing in just a moment. Also, we have Thomas O'Hara. He is also the main public information officer that folks around here deal with, or one of the main ones. So he knows a little bit about everything. And of course, Gary York, who has a challenging story to tell about what's going on there. I'm going to start with you, Tom.
Okay.
Number one, I don't know if people really even know what the Corps of Engineers is. I know they sort of reroute rivers, and if there, water's going where it's not and it's big water, they try to take care of it. But really, what do they do in a nutshell? Then we'll move to what you're doing over there.
Well, the Corps of Engineers is about 35,000 members strong across the globe, mostly civilians. There's a misunderstanding that you have to join the Army to be in the Corps, but actually only a couple hundred members of the Corps are actually officers enlisted. Most are civilians like ourselves. And in the Omaha district, we have about 1,200 members within a 9-state region and about 800 downtown. And we've been around since 1934. Our missions include military construction, civil works, and environmental restoration. And our annual program is in the neighborhood of about $500 million a year.
Well, you can get an idea from what he says they do here that there are those kinds of things that desperately need to be done in Iraq. They're also have been doing things in Afghanistan. So you were all volunteers as you went over there.
Yes.
They haven't ordered anybody to go so far.
Fortunately, it's all been volunteer. Most of us went on 4 or 6-month assignments, some for second tours. Gary's going back here for a second tour here soon. And we've had about 60 from our district, the Omaha area, go, but about 2,000 to date since early part of 2003 have gone over there as kind of a leapfrog assignment to restore power, electricity, water, and new construction throughout the country.
All those things that we heard so much about early on after the bombing went on and everything. Infrastructure, and I suppose that can't be said enough. And in fact, I'll talk to you, Dave. You're a computer guy,
right?
And I guess in my mind, you're a specialist in computers, and that there aren't a lot of computers over there.
Actually, there is. My job when I was over there was for the central district of Iraq, covering the whole for the Corps, the central part. We had 9 separate facilities throughout the whole central region. And I did the computer systems and the satellite communications also.
In fact, we have a picture of you with the big satellite dishes behind you. So, was theirs messed up, or do they have a lot of computers that were up to date over there, or did you bring in computers and start to get a better communication grid?
My job was just basically to support the Corps infrastructure. We didn't do a lot of work outside the Corps.
In other words, you guys needed to communicate, and you've all got computers.
Right. But there was a major Baghdad university down there that has nothing but computer classes, and it was very popular. I mean, they have computer systems just like we do, operated the same. The only thing is it wrote in Arabic, where ours wrote in English.
I didn't assume that they were kept in the dark from the computer age, but knowing what I know, and didn't know him personally, Saddam Hussein wasn't much for letting people communicate over large distances because he liked to compartmentalize everybody and keep them isolated.
Right.
So this is probably, did you interact much with the Iraqis?
My job, I didn't interact a lot with the Iraqis. I did a lot of communications with some of the locals that worked on post. But as far as going out with the engineers and everything, no, I didn't do a whole lot of communications.
Was it a massive job when they came in, when the Corps first came in to and I guess they're used to doing this, but setting up basically a whole operation for an entire country?
Actually, it flows pretty smooth. We have the infrastructure already set up before we leave, and once we get there, just about where things need to be and how it needs to go.
But the satellite communications, what kind of stuff does the Corps do by satellite? Or you get the satellites ready for the Army and the Marines that have to use them?
Everything is done by satellite from there. It comes from Iraq to, I think it was Portland, Oregon, and from Portland it goes to wherever you need to go.
And everything is done quicker and better because you
Right.
have these kind of communication systems.
And it's a constant upgrade. You know, we were constantly changing, mishaps here and there that happened.
They happen here, since I'm living in computer hell at my home right now. Melissa, you have an interesting story, both from a personal point of view and, you know, reaching back here home, but we'll talk about what you did over there. But you had gone to law school, taken the bar exam, and tell us what happened.
I took the bar exam like a week before I had to deploy to Iraq. So I found out while I was in Iraq that I had passed the bar exam. And in order to be able to actually practice law, you have to be sworn in. So they decided that we would use video teleconferencing. Thanks to Dave was actually there and he helped me set it up. But we used video teleconference between myself and Baghdad, Iraq, and the Supreme Court Justice of Iowa in Des Moines, Iowa, and swore me into the bar that way.
And I imagine, I read a quote, or maybe you said something, that you were the first one in Army fatigues that had been sworn.
Yeah, I think that was a first indeed. So yeah, I had my desert camouflage uniform on and said my oath that way.
The job that you were involved with was pretty important, both to our people over there and to the Iraqis.
As a project engineer over there, I did a lot of force protection, so I did get to work with a lot of Iraqis and help them build their companies up, and it was just really neat to see them become business people. But it was very important to the soldiers and the civilians working over there more so, because we needed protection from the incoming mortars or rockets or what might occur. So.
Give me a for instance of something that you would be involved with, you know, something tangible that they could
we put up
picture.
big, tall concrete barriers a lot around all of the trailers or anything that wasn't already a concrete building. We put Mylar on, which is like a film, on the windows so that if something happened, the windows wouldn't shatter. And
you know, I never thought about, you saw, especially early on, they put big concrete things all around the green zone and all that. Somebody's got to do it.
Yep.
And the fighting people, I'm sure they did some of that at first because they're, but you're the ones that make all this sort of protection from the outside in happen.
correct.
That's pretty exciting. Gary knows about the need to be protected.
Yeah. I can attest to that firsthand. Well, I went into Iraq under a task force RE, which was to restore Iraqi electricity. And we broke up into teams. I ended up in the northern sector of Iraq, doing assessments at power plants and transmission lines and switch yards. We flew transmission lines and photographed down towers, counted towers and miles of conductor that needed to be replaced, and gathered information. This information then we put together to write the scope of the work that needed to be done to hire the contractors. And then after the contracts were written, I picked up a quality control job on a transmission line from a town in northern Iraq called Beji that ran into western Baghdad. And as such, I was on the road practically at some point in time every day. And as you travel, your odds go down. It's just a matter of time, it seems like, before something happens to somebody who travels. And I had 2 or 3 close calls, and then on Christmas Eve of 2003, I guess my luck had kind of run out. We were hit by Balad north of Baghdad on the way back to our camp in Beji. And we lost 2 people. And I and 2 other people were wounded.
That is incredible. I mean, well, it isn't incredible, hard to believe, but it is incredible. I was going to ask you, one of the questions was, had you had any fatalities? And you saw it. I mean, you were there.
Yes.
And
yes,
I could tell
yes.
you're still
Yeah,
moved by that.
you carry it. You do carry it with you. And
But you're going back,
well, I
maybe?
probably more likely will go back. I felt like I was cheated out of completion of something, and I just there's so much to be done there, so much work that you need to do, and I met so many people. I mean, I met Bedouins out on the desert that were nomadic, and they were herding their sheep just like they did in the biblical times, and we're out there stringing these big voltage, high voltage towers, and you know, here comes a sheep herder, and he's trying to give you tea, and you're going, my goodness. I mean, their hearts were in the right place, and you know those were the people that you were there to help, not the ones that were causing all the problem.
You were talking before the show about a hydroelectric plant that you were involved with.
Yes, that was called the Haditha Dam. It's a great success story over there. It's up and running. It was originally constructed by the Russians. There were many things wrong in it. Had a lot of pump problems. We did a lot of contracts and stuff on that, and some vibration problems in the turbine. Now all have been fixed.
And it works, it has larger capacity than when Saddam was running things.
Right, it's up and going strong.
That's unbelievable. Tom, you had the luxury, you know, there's something good about being a public information officer, is that you're there to facilitate information and to help come back here and tell people stories. So you got to kind of go all over.
I got a chance to see a lot more the country. I was there for 2 tours, and both times I had the opportunity to go as far north as the Mosul and as far south as Basra. And it was both beneficial but frustrating to have that experience and not be able to share that experience. I mean, these folks all had such a crucial component. You know, Dave making sure we can talk, and like Melissa working on forest protection, and and Gary in reconstruction of the power grid. And you kind of, when you're stuck in that, you get frustrated because you don't really see how it interconnects with everything else. And I was fortunate to get kind of a bird's eye view, one way or the other. And there's some incredible things going on. Well, the one thing I don't think has been accurately conveyed is a starting point. When we live in a country which we take for granted, a light goes out, it gets fixed in 10 minutes. But in many cases, we weren't rebuilding Iraq, we were building Iraq.
Right. When we hit country there and we went north, I mean, our shower was a bottle of water we dumped on ourselves every day for the first month. We didn't have power except for maybe a few hours during the day. And, I mean, things were living pretty rough there. And
I know you're a humble lot, I mean, because we don't hear a lot, although it's your job to sort of toot the horn, not from a lack of humility, but to tell people the stories about what is happening over there. And there has been a lot of criticism about the news media. I tend to think that there are limitations that they have over there. I'm not defending them, and then when things would go crazy, like when all that was going on in Fallujah, they have a limited, finite number of people. And generally the news that has to get reported is the fighting, and the insurgency.
Well, I will say this, and you're correct. I cannot say that what people have heard reported over there is not true. I've just maintained it's only part of the story.
I don't doubt that.
And they were limited. A lot of the media was stuck on the east side of the Tigris in the Baghdad and Sheraton Hotel. They lived under the same security concerns. But I guess my frustration in the public information arena is, please tell that story, but also tell what's going on over there. So not only mom and dad back here, whose sons and daughters are over there serving, get an accurate impression that things aren't just people getting shot at. There's things being done, but also the Iraqis themselves can see that their life is getting better. The Corps of Engineers was able to add close to 2,000 megawatts of capacity to the country's grid. They're able to get the oil infrastructure exportations back online, adding billions of dollars to their economy. They were able to get refinery capabilities started back in the country so they could make their own gasoline, make their own heating oil.
And folks like Dave, who didn't physically do all that, made it possible. And you protected the people. I mean, the massive effort. I guess I'm not so naive as to think that all this stuff doesn't have to be done by people and that we're doing a lot of it. But unless you see it and hear the stories, I think you don't realize the immensity of the breadth of this. Did it kind of overwhelm you when you went? You're a young person, you haven't been too many places.
Oh, I think the big thing for me was talking with the local Iraqis that would come and work, because I worked with them on an almost daily basis, and to hear their stories about what it was like when Saddam was in control and how repressed they were. I mean, some of these people have way more education than we do. I mean, they have master's degrees and doctorate degrees, and they didn't get to use those with Saddam in power. And now these are the people that are coming out and risking their lives to work for the U.S. contractors just so they can build up their businesses, and their sons and daughters are now working for them, and that was unheard of before. So I think it is amazing just to hear about even why things are still in turmoil. Most of the Iraqis really are benefiting already and making their lives better, and they're so grateful to us. They want to do anything to make us happy. They really do.
And at times we didn't get that that opinion. I think the election over there has showed us that they must be happy with something because of the turnout. In other words, they must see hope. They must, I mean, I don't know at what stage of happiness or what stage of hope they're at, but they must see something. And we've heard a lot, sometimes the cameras go up to the people that are unhappy. News is usually bad by its nature. It's not the positive thing, even when you look at the local news. Did you, who were working on all the stuff for the Corps generally, did you get a feel for what was happening outside of your realm?
Oh yeah, I definitely, like I said, Tom, I was on my second tour also. And the first tour, we got out almost daily to go to the different core sites to, you know, build up their communications, get them online so they can communicate with everybody else. And we noticed a lot more freedom on the first tour over there than we did the second. So something in there with the insurgency, you know, was building up, where the second tour, you couldn't go anywhere.
But it didn't break the spirit of the Iraqis you worked with.
Right.
I mean, I had a lot of respect for the Iraqis that would come inside the wire every day. We worked in the green zone, and like Gary mentioned, you minimize your exposure if you could. A lot of our core folks worked at the sites that they were building rather than traveling back and forth. But the Iraqis we worked with, they lived in Baghdad, and they had to come in and out the gates every day, and sometimes I know a couple that weren't able to survive the year, but it didn't discourage them. Their friends paid their respects, went to their funerals, and they showed up the next day. And I think the world saw their dedication in this election, and that's what we've been fortunate to have a firsthand experience for the last 2 years. It's not a new news story for those who have been over there, but I think to the greater world, who now is just enamored by the dedication of the Iraqi people in this election, it seems new, and that's what we've been saying. You know, this is what we've experienced.
So you're not surprised at,
No.
at
No,
the
not
turnout
at
over
all.
there?
Oh, no.
No, every day was a risk for them. Like he said, just to come to work. I mean, I know a lot of my contractors would change cars daily even, or change their beard from day to day so that they wouldn't stand out so much. But people would still know it was them and target them. They had to have bodyguards and everything else to come to work, but they still did it because they wanted to make their life better.
I
So
had,
I'm not surprised.
Primarily Iraqi guards. We only had a couple Americans. I had an American and 2 American guards, and the rest of the security crew were Iraqi. And they would come back to work the next day, and they would have letters, and they would translate the letters, and they'd go home and they'd find these on their doors. It says, you know, do not work with these Americans. And they were threatened for working with us, providing protection services. But they showed up every day. I mean, they believed in it. Many of the guards spoke a little English, and you were quite surprised to find out how many of them had relatives living in Detroit, Lincoln, Nebraska, Chicago. I mean, it was just amazing.
One of the things that I remember when the soldiers first came in there and they had a ability to take a breath after going in there was the relationship with the children. I mean, we did see a lot of that, and I mean, my guess is that children are the same all over the world. Before they're, you know, indoctrinated into various hatreds and prejudices.
The children were what you needed. When you had a long day, if you were fortunate to be in a place where you were able to interact with the local community or, you know, the Iraqi children, they recharged your batteries because they gave you a hug. We had a school in the green zone which we unofficially adopted like other units did throughout the country, and we'd send home requests, school supplies and stuff, and you show up and you want to take them home with you. It was tough, but they are the future of Iraq, and they are what recharged your batteries when you knew what you were doing was worthwhile.
And we did make a lot of trips, and I know you did also, to orphanages, just to see what they needed, you know, what kind of stuff that, you know, was more important to them than the other, and the only thing they thought about was the kids. They didn't care about safety for themselves. It was just whatever you can do for the kids.
People are the same all over the world. I mean, they're as human beings, we're constantly looking ahead. Maybe individually on any given day we don't feel like that, but we are looking ahead, and our children,
That's right.
you know, keep us looking ahead.
Right.
What was the most surprising thing that any of you saw? You know, that you just went, whoa.
Well, it was almost all a surprise from day to day. But the thing
You know, when you wrote home first, what was it? Or you emailed?
The thing that kind of shocked me being in the communications arena is after the fall of Saddam, how many of the homes and apartment complexes had satellite TV antennas. I mean, that was something that was totally unheard of when Saddam.
Oh yeah, they
overnight.
could get information from the outside. Can't
Those
be having
really,
that.
literally
Oh, yeah, I
came
mean,
on board overnight.
You can see them. And we should point out, we've talked a lot about the Corps here, but it's a combined effort with our folks on the ground, our service folks, and other government agencies, but really the Iraqi people too. They're very capable, and we mentioned that in the Baghdad University, we work with a lot of engineers, computer science majors, very capable, but what they've been denied is the technology and the resources for 20 years. In fact, in 2003, when I went into what was formerly one of their electrical commissions, I picked up one of those big 12-inch floppy disks that, you know, I haven't seen one of those around the United States since
my
1980, but that's what they had circa 2002. So that gives you an idea of how far behind they were. And that was the stranglehold Saddam had on his people.
Well, you're mentioning something that a lot of the news that we got probably before the election, this, when are the Americans going to get out, or when are we going to get more help in, and when are we going to just split from them, not have them have a hold on us? What you're saying is that many of them don't feel that we have a hold on them, that we are.
Well, I think any society wants to stand up
Right.
on their own. So I'm sure there's some element saying, let's do this ourselves. We don't need the
Right,
Americans.
but on a one-on-one basis.
One-on-one, they understood there's a security issue was vital. So if we do nothing else, we're the police on the streets until the police can stand up. But we're fortunate to be able to provide them resources, guidance. The Corps has brought Iraqi engineers back to the States to teach them GIS mapping techniques and to kind of bring them into the 21st century. So it's a partnership.
Yeah, but something as simple as maps, accurate maps and things. What was it you that were telling me that sometimes on the back of a
Something that hasn't really been conveyed is just the magnitude of where we started from.
Right.
Is when Baghdad fell, April 9, 2003, and the Ba'ath Party was leaving Baghdad, they were burning down their ministries. And before that
Destroying
happened,
documents.
Saddam didn't let their folks know much more what happened outside their sector. So when the first elements of the Corps landed in Baghdad, they had to bring the Iraqis together, and it was literally back of a cocktail napkin. This is kind of somehow connected here, so we'll figure out this box later.
And you'd get this person would say, well, that, and then this person would have to add their 2 cents before you could get the whole picture.
Because
Sort
the
of like
records were destroyed.
the old Hindu thing about the blind people and the elephant.
We had a Korean contractor who was having trouble getting a hold of the plans for our high voltage towers. And he actually went to a home of an Iraqi engineer and bought them from him, because that man had taken them home because he knew someday somebody was going to need these, and he was afraid of what would happen if he didn't protect them.
And in the early stages, like you said, it's one of those you did what you had to do to get the job done.
Yeah, and that
If
turned out to
meant-
be a
If that meant going to a local national to find out, say, hey, where does this go? Where does this go? Or, telling him what you need, and we did that numerous times. Is we'd have a computer breakdown and we'd need a part, and we'd show it to our interpreter, and he said, "Be right back." 20
Right.
minutes later, here he
Very
comes.
capable.
they were great shoppers.
Great, very capable.
And that's how they've survived all these years in getting just the bare
Real
necessities.
thrifty.
So when we have, how many forces?
I think in their neighborhood of 150,000, but that changes, and that's U.S. and coalition.
And that includes.
And that doesn't include the
no.
civilians on the ground. Currently, as far as the Corps of Engineers, we have about 420 volunteers on the ground right there at any given time.
Yeah.
So, and that's working with the Iraqi engineers. We have about 140,000 Iraqis working on Corps projects right now. That's one of the goals is to let the Iraqis, it helps build the economy.
So
and
the
helps give
numbers
them
speak for
ownership.
themselves, in a
Yes.
sense.
Right.
Your number of 400 plus at any given time, and 100,000 plus, so that you aren't hogging the whole thing.
No, no. In fact, the effort is to get the reconstruction dollars into the Iraqi community. A lot of it's being funded. I mentioned the oil program. The export's been restored. That's billions of dollars a year now of Iraqi-generated money that's helping fund their reconstruction. So it's working, and it's only been a year, and look how far we've come.
I sense an excitement. Number one, I think it'd probably be good not to have to do the same old thing you did back here every day. And I don't mean that in a negative way. We all need to be recharged, but maybe that's a little more recharging than you imagined. But you seem really excited and proud about what
It's
you
an
did.
accomplishment, and it really makes you feel good. In my case, I was the only QA guy there.
What's
and I
a
had,
QA?
Quality assurance.
Okay.
And we had like 400 guys out there spread out up and down that line, and it was a huge project going on. And it was just rewarding to go up and down and see the progress taking place each day.
And they're excited, and then you're
And
excited.
when you're putting
And
money
that's-
into the economy, we had a lot of Iraqis hired, and
And
taking that money home.
You end up making a name, not necessarily for yourself, but the Corps as a whole, where your first tour over there, you're just so amazed, and once you get back home, you say, "Boy, I'll never do that again."
Nothing
But then-
compared to it.
Then, in my example, a few months later, I'm going, "Boy, should I do this again? Yeah, why not? It was fun."
Yeah.
So a sense of accomplishment is what sends a lot of people back for second, third, fourth tours even.
You get that immediate feedback from the Iraqi people that you're making a difference in their life. And if anything, it's probably more personally rewarding and professionally
Right.
rewarding.
Right.
Nothing will compare what you do back in the States. As admirable as proud as the profession is, and
it's necessary.
and necessary. You take it for granted. but over there, every little bit counted.
And it reminds you, I know you're not all engineers per se, the Army Corps of Engineers, but you understand how much we do, as you said, take for granted that our entire infrastructure that we've had 200 years to build, and we've had cutting edge technology, much of which was generated here, and they're like, I guess the build-up demand, the pent-up demand is just huge on there.
You get a chance, Haditha Dam, the one day there's going to be some nice hotels across that dam and on that lakefront.
A lot of beachfront there.
A lot of beachfront there. The promise of Iraq.
And there's not a lot of water. In fact, I think Saddam Hussein to the south
You look
drained
at
a lot.
that, the Euphrates River coming in there is just beautiful. I mean, it's a massive amount of water there that's backed up. There's
Well, picturesque.
opportunities. Yeah, very picturesque.
Boy, that leisure activity pretty soon. Someday they'll have time for it. So we've only got a couple of minutes left. I was reading a little bit of the history of the Corps of Engineers, and George Washington hired the first engineers, and then it was kind of spotty until they really got up and running as the Corps of Engineers. If old George and his first engineer could see, what you do here all the time, but what you've done over there, I mean,
We drew the parallel. Actually, the Army Corps of Engineers has been around longer than our country. Like you said, George Washington stood it up before we actually had a country. And it's kind of ironic that the Corps of Engineers was one of the first on the grounds in Baghdad before the new Iraq country stood up. So there's a little bit of life repeating itself, I think, from the Corps of Engineers, and it's proud to be a part of that.
Which just, all of you who are engineers out there, this is a lesson in how we do take you for granted. Were you in there early? I mean, did they have the Corps poised to go in there?
Baghdad fell April 9th, 2003, and their Task Force Fajr, which is Arabic for New Dawn, was right there behind them, and the Restore Iraqi Oil Task Force crossed the southern border like day 2, putting out oil well fires. They were right there every step of the way.
Well, I just want to tell the folks that if you go to our Consider This website, you can see there's a web link, and you may have seen it on your screen, that'll tell you what's actually going on over there in the Gulf with the Corps. I want to thank you for being with us. This is exciting as an American. It is nice to know the kinds of things you are doing. Dave Holly, Melissa Head, Thomas O'Hara, Gary York, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're going back there. Thank you for joining us this week on Consider This.
To view this edition of Consider This or past programs, visit our website at unotv.unomaha.edu. For comments or questions, call 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. Consider This is a production of UNO Television.